Joseph Arridy, born January 6, 1939, was a mentally disabled American man who was falsely convicted and wrongfully executed for the 1936 rape and murder of Dorothy Drain in Pueblo, Colorado. He was easily manipulated by the police to make a false confession due to his mental incapacities. Arridy was 23 years old when he was executed. Arridy was born to Mary and Henry Arridy, recent immigrants from Syria, which was part of the Ottoman Empire at the time. They were seeking work and did not speak much English. Henry took a job with a major steel mill in Pueblo that he learned was hiring workers. Joseph Arridy never spoke for the first 5 years of his life. After he attended 1 year at elementary school, his principal told his parents to keep him at home, saying that he could not learn in a typical public school setting. After Joseph's father lost his job a few years later, he appealed to friends to help him find a place for his son. Arridy was admitted at the age of 10 to the state's home and training school for mental defectives, where he lived on and off until becoming a young adult. He was often mistreated and beaten by his peers both in his neighborhood and at the school, due to his childish mannerisms. He often ran away from school and hopped on freight railcars to leave the city, ending up at the age of 21 in the rail yards of Cheyenne, Wyoming. On August 14, 1936, 2 girls of the Drain family were attacked while sleeping at home in Pueblo, Colorado. Both 15-year-old Dorothy and her 12-year-old sister Barbara were bludgeoned by an intruder with what was believed to be a hatchet. Dorothy was also raped, but she died from the hatchet attack while Barbara survived. On August 26, 1936, Arridy was arrested for homelessness in Cheyenne after being caught wandering around the rail yards. The county sheriff, George Carroll, was aware of the widespread search for suspects in the Drain murder case. When Arridy revealed under questioning that he had traveled through Pueblo by way of a train after leaving Grand Junction, Carroll began to question him about the Drain case. Carroll claimed that Arridy confessed to him and him alone. When Carroll contacted the Pueblo police chief, Arthur Grady, regarding Arridy, Carroll learned that they had already arrested a man considered to be the prime suspect, a laborer from Mexico named Frank Aguilar. Aguilar had worked for the father of the Drain girls and been fired shortly before the attack. An axe head was recovered from Aguilar's home. But Sheriff Carroll insisted that Arridy told him several times he had been with a man named Frank at the crime scene. Aguilar later confessed to the attack, but told police he had never seen or met Arridy before. Aguilar was also convicted of the rape and murder of Dorothy Drain and sentenced to death a year later. Without much resistance, the police transported Arridy to Pueblo, where he reportedly confessed again. Initial reaction from the press were unfoundedly cruel. The newspapers had several nicknames for him, such as the feeble-minded killer, weak-witted sex slayer, and perverted maniac. When the case was finally taken to trial, Arridy's lawyer pled insanity to spare his client's life. Arridy was ruled to be insane, while acknowledged by 3 state psychiatrists to be so mentally limited as to be classified as an imbecile, which was a medical term at the time. They declared he had an IQ of 46, equivalent to the mind of a 6-year-old. They noted that he was incapable of distinguishing between right and wrong, and therefore, would be unable to perform any action with a criminal intent. But Arridy was convicted primarily due to his lack of response during questioning, and largely because of his coerced false confession. Studies since that time have shown that persons of limited mental capacity are more vulnerable to intimidation during interrogation, and have a higher frequency of making false confessions. There was no physical evidence against him. Barbara Drain had testified that Aguilar had been present at the attack but not Arridy. She could identify Aguilar because he had worked for her father. Attorney Gail L. Ireland, who later was elected and served as Colorado Attorney General and Water Commissioner, became involved as defense counsel in Arridy's case after his conviction and sentencing. While Ireland won delays of Arridy's execution, he was unable to get his conviction overturned or commutation of his sentence, since Arridy himself did not comprehend his dire situation to tell the truth or defend himself. Ireland continued to note that Aguilar had confessed to acting alone, and medical experts had testified as to Arridy's mental limitations. Ireland said that Arridy could not even understand what execution meant. He was quoted saying, "Believe me when I say that if he is executed by gas chamber, it will take a long time for the state of Colorado to live down the disgrace of executing an innocent man under the eyes of the Colorado Supreme Court." But despite this, Arridy received 9 stays of execution as appeals and petitions on his behalf were mounted. While held on death row during the appeals process, Arridy often played with a toy train, given to him by prison warden Roy Best. The warden said that Arridy was the happiest prisoner on death row. He was liked and treated well by both the prisoners and guards alike. Every day, Arridy would reach through the bars of his cell and send his wind-up train chugging down the corridor of death row. Other condemned prisoners would reach out from their cells, playfully cause diversions for his toy train, and even recreated Old West-style rescues similar to what was shown on television at the time, which Arridy enjoyed. When his train wandered too far off, guards would send the train back so he could play again. The warden, Roy Best, became one of Arridy's supporters and joined the effort to save his life. He was said to have cared for Arridy like a son, regularly bringing him gifts. Before Arridy's execution, Roy said that Arridy probably didn't even know he was about to die, and that was probably a good thing. "I'm glad he was distracted, sitting and playing with a toy train I had given him." The day before his execution, he received a farewell visit from his mother and aunt, one cousin, and his 14-year-old sister. None of the relatives brought up his execution, being aware of his limited grasp of incarceration and capital punishment, and instead kept their visit light-hearted, though his mother sobbed at the end, much to Joe's wonderment. When the women left, Joe returned to his toy train. For his last meal, Arridy requested ice cream. When questioned about his impending execution, he showed only blank bewilderment. He did not understand the meaning of the gas chamber, nor the concept of death. Some inmates just told him he would have a really pleasant nap time, which calmed Arridy. Before being taken away to the chamber, Arridy reportedly had not finished his ice cream, and requested for the remaining ice cream to be refrigerated, so he could eat it later, not understanding that he was to be executed soon, and would not return. He was reported to have smiled while being taken to the gas chamber. Momentarily nervous due to the chamber's claustrophobic nature, he calmed down when the warden grabbed his hand and reassured him. Members of the victim's family chose not to witness the execution. Roy Best was noted to have been crying during the slow process of activating the chamber, with him pleading with Teller Ammons, the governor of Colorado, to commute Arridy's sentence before he was killed. But Ammons refused to commute Arridy's sentence, or to pardon him, on the grounds that the mentally challenged Arridy did not explicitly verbalize he was innocent. Thus, he was executed on January 6, 1939. Arridy's case is one of a number that received new attention in the face of research into ensuring just interrogations and confessions. In addition, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to apply the death penalty to convicted persons who are mentally disabled. Some supporters formed the nonprofit group called Friends of Joe Arridy, and worked to bring new recognition to the injustice of his case, in addition to commissioning a tombstone for his grave in 2007. Attorney David A. Martinez became involved and relied on Robert Persky's book about Arridy's case, as well as other materials compiled by the Friends, and his own research, to prepare a 400-page petition for a pardon from Governor Bill Ritter. Based on the evidence and other reviews, Ritter gave Arridy a full and unconditional pardon in 2011. He was quoted saying, "Pardoning Joe Arridy cannot undo this tragic event in Colorado history. It is in the interests of justice and simple decency, however, to restore his good name." In June 2007, the dedication of a commissioned tombstone was held by Arridy's grave at Woodpecker Hill in Canyon City's Greenwood Cemetery, near the state prison. It was attended by about 50 of his supporters, 68 years after his death.